Greetings and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 38 of Karl's Spirits. Tonight, we're going to be tasting Michters Small Batch Bourbon US 1 Whiskey. So, this is a whiskey based on a historic brand and a historic distillery. The distillery originally started in 1753 in Pennsylvania. But the Michters today, the one that we are sampling, is a relatively young company. The Catham Imports Company acquired the trademark brand in 1997 after the previous trademark had been abandoned by the original Pennsylvania-based Michters Distillery, which closed in 1990. So 1753 to 1990 is a long history of distilling. Now, they were not continuously open. They had closed a number of times. They were reopened by different companies over the years, but in 1990, they finally closed their doors. The brand relaunched under Catham in Kentucky in the early 2000s, using source whiskey from Kentucky Distillers, for their product. And then in 2012, Michters Distillery, after many years and many millions of dollars of renovation, finally opened up their own distillery and producing their own product. As of about a year or 2 years ago, all the juice that we are getting now from Michters is their product, we think. There's a little haziness to their disclosure about whose juice is really in the bottle. The current Michters produces a lineup that includes small batch, which is what we're trying tonight. They produce an American whiskey, a sour mash. They produce a rye that's highly regarded. They also do limited releases every year of a 10 and 20-year spirit, and they have done a 25-year spirit before, obviously a source bourbon. The small batch that we're trying is truly a small batch. Now, remember, there is no legal definition for small batch. It could be 3 barrels. It could be 300 barrels. That each distillery calls a small batch. There's no legal definition of that. Michters uses 20 barrels or less to create each product. So this requires a lot of skill, as there is less room for error. In other words, if you're dumping hundreds or thousands of barrels, you can cover up inconsistencies pretty easily. It gets lost in the massive quantity. With 20 barrels, you better be spot on with your product, or it's going to be a not very good bourbon. As I said, there's some haziness as to what's actually in the bottle. As such, there is no published mash bill. There's no real rumored mash bill out there, although sources say less than probably 10 to 12% rye. Tasting Michters now today, I would definitely agree with that. There's not a whole lot of rye in the bottle. There's also no age statement, but it's at least 4 years old. I would lean probably to the 4-year mark. It's probably 4 years and a couple of months. It is not aged very long. It's not bad. It's just not aged a lot at this point. And it is bottled at 91.4 proof. So it's a nice, solid proof bourbon. So in the glass, guys, it's actually really pretty in the glass. It's a good, solid copper color, really pretty. Hope you can see that. The lines are really fat and thick. They really stick to the glass well. Beautiful, beautiful in the glass. As for the nose and taste, let's get into that at this time. This has a definite classic bourbon nose to me. It's got a nice healthy dose of vanilla and caramel right off the top. But there's also a few other little things that you pick up after you smell it for a few minutes. I'm going to call it like a cinnamon donut. It's not a pastry. It's more of a donut, a cinnamon donut. It's got a kind of yeasty cinnamon smell to it. And there's also a little bit of barrel char. We don't know what number char they used in their barrels. I'm going to assume it was a fairly heavy char. but I can definitely pick up the barrel char on the nose. Tasting this bourbon. A couple of notes really stand out to me very quickly. First, it's an oily honey. And that's not off putting at all. It's a really sweet forward, very oily, coats your mouthfeel. It's got a nice small chew. It's not thick. It's just almost a chew, but it's not quite there. But it's oily and really sweet, very honey like at the beginning. There's also a large, strong caramel profile right in the middle. And then just to show that there's a little spice in here, there's a little baking spice right at the edges of the tongue. This is a bourbon that really goes down very easily. It's got a nice, pleasant taste. Finish. It's a medium finish. It doesn't last very long. In fact, I would even say this is a medium short finish. Has a little black pepper right on the end, but there's also more of those sweet honey notes that pop up right as that finish fades. It's smooth. It's really a mellow bourbon. So my takeaway on Michter's small batch. I think this would be a great bourbon for beginners. It's very smooth, very mellow, retains great flavor and sweetness, with just a hint of spice at the very end. It's not overly complex, so I think experienced drinkers may not care for it too much. I think they may find the lack of depth to be very off putting. It's a really nice sipping bourbon. I can see where the lack of bite and how mellow this bourbon is could really catch the uninitiated very easily. They're going to be knocking these back pretty quick, drinking them fairly rapidly. It goes down very easy. And I think at 91.4 proof or whatever I said earlier, 91.4, this could be very dangerous to the unwary. So what am I going to give this? Karl scale. I really like its approachability. I like the mellowness. I like the sweetness, the honey sweet, the caramel flavors in there. I don't like that it's not as complex as some of the other bourbons we've had. I think it could be a little bit more. So my take on this, I'm going to give this, because of price, which is a $40 bottle roughly, I'm going to give this a 4.25 stars. It's just very approachable, very mellow. And I think that is what Michters is really going for there. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, peace, and happy pours.